I woke up in the middle of the night with a sense of unease, the air in the room feeling heavier than usual. Beside me, the bed was empty, the blanket still smooth as if the person who should be there had never returned. I sat up, squinting into the darkness, trying to calm myself. Maybe Ethan, my husband, had just gone down to the kitchen for some water or was in the living room watching the news like he often did on sleepless nights. But then, a sound echoed, small yet sharp. Ethan's low voice cut through the silence. My breath hitched. I didn't usually hear him talking at night, especially not in such a cautious whisper. I carefully slid out of bed, my bare feet touching the icy floor, each step slow and deliberate to avoid making a sound. Not yet, she doesn't suspect anything. I froze in the hallway, my breath caught in my chest. Each word that left Ethan's mouth was like a razor slicing through the trust I had in him. Who was she? And what was it that I wasn't supposed to suspect? I forced myself to stay still, pressing against the cold wall, my heart pounding. Ethan spoke again, this time even lower, almost as if to reassure someone. Yeah, almost done. Just need a little more time. I couldn't make out the response from the other end, but I didn't need to. A chill ran through me, though there was no draft. Instinct told me this wasn't a work call or some meaningless conversation. Ethan's tone, the calmness, the unsettling certainty, said it all. My hands clenched into fists. I could storm in right now, confront him, demand answers. But I held back. I needed to know more. I needed to understand what was happening before I acted. Silently, I slipped back into bed, pulling the blanket over my shoulders, pretending to be asleep. A minute later, I heard his footsteps returning. The bed dipped as he lay down beside me, exhaling softly as if nothing had happened. I turned, slowly opening my eyes to look at him in the dark. "Where did you go?" My voice was quiet, laced with feigned sleepiness. Ethan didn't blink, answering instantly, just went to the kitchen for some water. Lie. I didn't respond, just gave a small nod before rolling over, facing away from him, closing my eyes. But my mind replayed his words. She doesn't suspect anything. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Ethan was still asleep beside me, his face eerily peaceful. I slipped out of bed quietly, grabbed my phone and headed straight to the kitchen. The warmth of the coffee in my hands did nothing to chase away the cold dread settling in my chest. I opened my banking app, my heartbeat quickening as I entered my password. Ethan had always handled our finances. I had never paid much attention to small transactions. But now, I had a reason to look. The transaction history loaded, I skimmed through the list, scanning quickly, until I stopped. $1,500, cash withdrawal. $800, transfer. $2,200, unspecified payment. A series of transactions appeared, none of them too large individually, but all made consistently over the past 3 months. They weren't bills, investments, or anything we had discussed. My grip on the phone tightened. I didn't want to jump to the worst conclusion, but the truth was staring me in the face. Ethan hadn't just lied about last night's call. He had been planning something for a while. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. I quickly locked my screen, schooling my expression as Ethan entered the kitchen, looking as composed as ever. "Morning," he greeted, pouring himself a cup of coffee. "You're up early?" I lifted my cup to my lips, using it to hide my face. "Couldn't sleep?" Ethan smirked slightly, picking up his phone to check his messages. I didn't know what he was reading, but I knew one thing for sure. I was suspicious now. And I wasn't going to let him stay a step ahead of me. "I just thought of something," he said while pouring his coffee, his voice perfectly casual. "We should make a joint financial list. What do you think?" I stiffened, though I tried not to let it show. "A financial list?" "Yeah, account passwords, ownership documents, investment details, all the important things in case of an emergency." He set his coffee down, leaning against the counter, eyes never leaving mine. "Just to make sure we both have full transparency." He was testing me. I stirred my coffee, buying time. Ethan had never been interested in my assets before. We had a joint account for daily expenses, but most of my earnings from real estate investments remained separate. I had never felt the need to share that information, and Ethan had never asked. But today was different. I took a slow sip of coffee, meeting his gaze. You want me to list all my assets? Ethan shrugged, offering a small smile. I just think we should have full transparency as a couple. We're a team, right? He was trying to read me. I set my cup down, forcing a light smile, pretending nothing was out of the ordinary. You have a point. I'll think about how to organize it. For a split second his eyes narrowed, a flicker of impatience, but just as quickly he masked it with his usual ease. Good. I think it'll give us peace of mind. But I didn't feel at peace at all. That night Ethan spent hours in his office, the door shut tight. I could hear him talking on the phone, his voice low and brief. I walked down the hallway, my bare feet against the wooden floor, stopping just outside his office door. My breath grew heavier as I caught the hushed murmurs. I couldn't make out the words, but from his tone I knew he was speaking to someone he didn't want me to know about. I stepped back, my heart pounding. Now wasn't the time, I needed to know more. A few minutes later Ethan stepped out of his office, his phone still pressed to his ear. When he saw me he stopped speaking for the briefest second, just long enough for me to realize he didn't want me to hear. I had an important call, he said quickly, walking toward the bathroom. I'm going to take a shower. I watched him disappear behind the door, the sound of water starting to run. And then, I saw it. His phone, lying on the table, screen facing down. For a moment I hesitated. But then, as if the universe wanted me to find out the truth, the screen lit up. A message appeared. Sender Rafael Moreno. I didn't know who Rafael Moreno was, but the words in the message made my entire body freeze. As long as she doesn't suspect anything else, the plan will be completed on time. I couldn't breathe for a few seconds, the world seemed to spin around me. The plan, completed on time? My hands clenched into fists. I wanted to pick up the phone, unlock it, read every single message, but I couldn't risk it. Ethan could come out at any moment. I couldn't let him know I had seen it. I turned away, quickly leaving the living room, my heartbeat pounding so loudly it echoed in my head. Ethan was hiding something. The next morning Ethan seemed unusually at ease, as if nothing was wrong. He sipped his coffee, scrolled through his phone, and even smiled when I walked into the kitchen. I just thought of something, he said casually, as if bringing up something ordinary. We need to handle some financial paperwork for taxes. Could you sign a few documents for me? I stood still, gripping my coffee cup. What documents? He pulled a stack of papers from his briefcase, sliding them toward me. Just some minor ownership adjustments to optimize our tax situation. My lawyer says this will save us quite a bit. I glanced at the pages in front of me. Property transfer. My stomach dropped. I flipped through the first page, my eyes scanning the dense lines of text. A sick feeling rose in my chest as I realized what they really meant. If I signed, every asset under my name, our home, my bank accounts, my investment funds, would be transferred to Ethan. He wanted me to hand everything over to him. Keeping my face neutral, I placed the documents down and met his eyes. Why have I never heard you mention this before? Ethan didn't blink. It's just a simple financial procedure, Amanda. I want to make sure everything is properly arranged in case of any unexpected risks. I smirked, but not out of amusement. What risks? He shrugged, still keeping his tone light. You know, unexpected situations can happen. It's always better for a couple's finances to be aligned. Did he think I was stupid? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. My voice was steady. If it's just a simple procedure, why do you need me to sign today? A brief silence, a second long enough for me to catch the flicker of impatience in his eyes. Ethan placed his coffee cup down, leaning in slightly, his voice lower but sharper. Amanda, you're making this into a bigger deal than it is. It's just a signature. Nothing changes. I held his gaze. If nothing changes, why do you need my signature? The fake warmth in his expression vanished completely. In its place, something colder, harder. You don't trust me? I stared at him, letting him find the answer himself. A smirk tugged at his lips, but this time it wasn't friendly. It was calculating. I thought we could do this the easy way, he said slowly, almost like a warning. But it seems you want to make things difficult. I didn't flinch. Are you threatening me, Ethan? He watched me for a moment, then straightened, grabbing the documents and stuffing them back into his briefcase. I'm just saying you should think carefully. I couldn't let Ethan get ahead of me. If he thought I would sign those papers without question, he was wrong. He wanted my assets? He wanted to make sure that when he walked away from this marriage he had everything in his hands? I was about to show him who was really in control. That night, I didn't mention the papers. I didn't confront him. I didn't show any signs of suspicion or resistance. I remained silent, keeping up the appearance of a wife who still trusted her husband. I knew that if he sensed I had caught on to his plan, he would accelerate everything. But I didn't waste a second. The moment Ethan left for work the next morning, I picked up my phone and called my lawyer, Rebecca Collins. She was one of the smartest and most reliable people I knew. "We need to move all my assets into a trust immediately," I said firmly. Rebecca didn't ask why. She knew what was happening in my marriage. And she knew that once I made a decision, I wouldn't change my mind. "We can do it today," she said. "But Amanda, are you sure? Once your assets are in the trust, they won't be under your name anymore." "I'm sure," I answered without hesitation. 4 hours later, everything was finalized. The apartment I lived in, the money in my savings accounts, even my long-term investments. Everything was protected. I controlled the trust, but legally, Ethan couldn't touch a single cent. I set my pen down, a wave of relief washing over me for the first time in weeks. I had ensured that he couldn't take anything from me. But I wasn't stopping there. I needed to make sure that when he made his move, I would be ready to make him face the consequences. The next morning, Ethan sat at the dining table, his coffee cup in hand, his expression eerily calm. I could sense something coming. Then he spoke. "Amanda," he said, placing his cup down slowly, "I've been thinking a lot about this. And I think we should get a divorce." I didn't react with surprise. I simply tilted my head, looking him straight in the eye. "Oh, what made you decide that?" He sighed, pretending to carry the weight of some great emotional burden. "Things between us aren't the same anymore. I think it would be better for both of us if we ended this amicably." "Amicably?" I raised an eyebrow. "So what do you want?" Ethan quietly slid a stack of papers toward me. "I want things to be fair," he said, flashing a practiced smile. "This is the divorce agreement. My lawyer drafted it. It ensures that both of us get a fresh start." I flipped through the pages, skimming through the clauses, and just as I expected, he wanted half of everything: the apartment, the cash, the investments. On top of that, he was requesting monthly financial support. I chuckled, just a small sound, but enough to make Ethan frown. I closed the documents, tapping my fingers against the cover before slowly pushing them back toward him. "You seem very sure about this," I said, my voice light but full of meaning. He tilted his head, waiting. I leaned back in my chair, arms crossed. "The problem is, you're a little too late." His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I smiled, savoring the moment. "You planned everything so carefully, didn't you, step by step? The secret phone calls at night, the withdrawals from our joint account, the lies about tax optimization." I leaned in closer, whispering, "You thought I didn't know?" Ethan tensed, though he tried to stay composed. "Amanda, what are you talking about?" I crossed my arms, my eyes never leaving his. "I moved all my assets into a trust." Silence filled the kitchen. His eyes widened, his fists clenched on the table. I could see the calculations in his head scrambling, searching for a counterattack. But for the first time, he had nothing. "That's impossible," he muttered. I shrugged. "It's very possible." I expected Ethan to explode. I thought he'd yell, slam his fist on the table, or try to persuade me to change my mind. But I was wrong. Instead of lashing out, he leaned back, crossing his arms over his chest, his eyes darkening. A thin, calculated smirk curled on his lips. "So, you had a plan all along," he said slowly, as if savoring a strategic game. I didn't respond, I just shrugged, keeping my gaze steady. "No matter," he said, picking up the divorce papers from the table, flipping through them lazily. "If you don't want to share the assets fairly, then I'll let the court decide." I wasn't surprised. I had expected this. And just as I predicted, less than a week later, I received a summons from his attorney. Ethan had officially filed a lawsuit demanding 50% of the assets, including the apartment, bank accounts, car, and even spousal support. He wanted to drain me down to the last cent. On the first day of court, I walked into the courtroom wearing a black business dress, my hair in a tight bun, my face expressionless. Ethan sat on the opposite side, looking as polished as always, but I could see the tension hiding beneath his smile. His attorney was the first to speak. "Your Honor, my client was married to the defendant for 8 years. During that time, they accumulated significant assets. My client believes he is entitled to a fair share of those assets upon the dissolution of the marriage." I kept my face impassive, though inside I wanted to laugh. A fair share? He was demanding half of everything I had built with my own hard work. Rebecca stood up, calmly opening her file, her sharp eyes unwavering. Your Honor, all of the defendant's assets were transferred into a legally binding trust before the plaintiff filed for divorce. By law, those assets are no longer under the defendant's personal ownership, and the plaintiff has no claim to them. The courtroom fell silent. Ethan turned to his lawyer, whispering something. I could see his fingers clenching into fists. Rebecca continued, her voice as sharp as a blade. Furthermore, we have substantial evidence that the plaintiff made multiple suspicious withdrawals from the joint account prior to filing for divorce, indicating a deliberate attempt to financially exploit the defendant. She placed a thick file on the judge's desk. We request that the plaintiff's claims be dismissed entirely and that he be held responsible for covering my client's legal fees. I glanced at Ethan. His face had gone pale. He could no longer hide the truth. This was the moment he realized he had underestimated me. The trial dragged on for a few more days, but the outcome didn't change. The judge dismissed Ethan's claims. He wouldn't receive a single cent from me, not a dime. Not only that, but the judge also ruled that he had to cover all legal fees, a significant sum. I saw the desperation flicker in his eyes as the verdict was read. He had bet everything on this lawsuit. He had thought he could corner me, break me. But he was the one left with nothing. After the trial, I walked out of the courthouse with Rebecca beside me, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Ethan followed me all the way to the parking lot. Amanda, his voice was rough, lacking the confidence he once had. I stopped, turning to face him. What? He narrowed his eyes at me, a flicker of rage flashing in his brown eyes. You think this is over? I smiled, unfazed. Ethan, this is over. And you lost. I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him standing there. A man who had lost everything. But I knew Ethan, and I knew he wouldn't accept defeat so easily. The legal battle was over. But I had a feeling he still had one last move left to play. I knew Ethan wouldn't go down without a fight. His note to me wasn't just a message, it was a warning, or rather, a threat. And just as I expected, he didn't stop. A week later, I got a call from Rebecca. Her tone was more serious than usual. Amanda, you need to come to the office, she said without hesitation. Ethan just filed a new complaint. I sat up straight. What is it this time? Rebecca sighed. He and his associate, someone named Rafael Moreno, have submitted evidence accusing you of financial fraud. According to their documents, you falsified tax reports and embezzled money from your investments. A chill ran through me. Ethan hadn't been able to take my assets. He hadn't been able to destroy my reputation with rumors, so now he was fabricating evidence to drag me into another legal battle. Is the evidence credible? I asked, keeping my voice steady. On the surface it seems solid, Rebecca replied. But I had a legal expert review it. We found an inconsistency. I sat still, listening. The transactions Ethan included in his allegations all trace back to a specific bank account. The problem is... Rebecca paused for a moment, then continued. That account didn't even exist at the time they claim the transactions took place. I blinked, feeling a surge of anger rise inside me. They fabricated everything? Exactly, she confirmed. They thought they could outsmart an audit, but they made a basic mistake. I gripped my phone tightly. So, can we countersue him? Rebecca laughed. Not only can we, but I'm looking forward to it. We'll sue Ethan and Rafael Moreno for defamation and submitting falsified evidence in court. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. This time, I wasn't just going to defend myself. I was going to take him down. The trial moved faster than I expected. Ethan's attorney stepped forward confidently, presenting the so-called evidence they had gathered. I watched Ethan, seeing the smug satisfaction on his face, as if he was convinced I wouldn't escape this time. But he had no idea what was coming. Rebecca stood up, as composed as ever. She opened her file and began her counterattack. Your Honor, the defense has thoroughly investigated these allegations, she said, her tone calm but razor-sharp. And we've uncovered an undeniable flaw. She placed a file on the judge's desk. The bank account that the plaintiff claims the defendant used for fraudulent transactions did not exist at the time. The courtroom fell silent for a few seconds. Ethan frowned, turning to his lawyer, confusion clear on his face. Rebecca continued. We confirmed this with the bank. That account was only opened 3 months after the plaintiff claims these transactions took place, meaning their entire case is built on fabricated evidence. The judge adjusted their glasses, scanning through the documents. They turned to Ethan's attorney. Do you have an explanation for this? The attorney stammered something, but it was clear they had no answer. The judge nodded, then spoke firmly. In that case, the court dismisses all of the plaintiff's claims. I glanced at Ethan. He was frozen in place, as if he couldn't believe what had just happened. But I wasn't finished yet. Rebecca slid another file onto the desk. Furthermore, we are officially filing a countersuit against the plaintiff for defamation and submitting falsified evidence in court. We are requesting full reimbursement for the defendant's legal fees and additional damages. Ethan jolted, real panic setting in this time. He whispered something to his lawyer, but all I saw was desperation. The judge flipped through the documents, then turned back to Ethan. Mr. Keller, do you have anything to say in response? Ethan said nothing. I looked at him one last time, and for the first time I saw no calculation, no confidence in his eyes, only defeat. The judge lifted the gavel. The court hereby dismisses all claims made by the plaintiff. Additionally, the plaintiff will be held responsible for covering all legal fees of the defendant. The sound of the gavel echoed like the final bell of a finished war. Ethan had lost, completely. I stood in front of the mirror, gazing at myself in the deep blue silk dress. The light reflected off the soft fabric, accentuating the strength and independence I had reclaimed. For the first time in months, I truly felt free. The court had spoken loud and clear. Ethan had lost everything. No money from me, no assets, no support. He had gambled his reputation and his financial future on a battle he could never win, and now all he had left was a mountain of debt, a ruined career, and a bleak future. He had thought I would be the victim. He had believed he could manipulate, control, and destroy me. But what he never understood was that I am not someone who is easily defeated. My fingers brushed over the silver pendant around my neck, a gift from my mother, who had always taught me that every time I rose after a fall, I would be stronger than before. Tonight, I was celebrating at an upscale restaurant in the heart of the city, surrounded by the people who had supported me through it all. Not just to mark the end of a toxic marriage, but to claim back my life in the most powerful way possible. Laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the room as I walked in. My friends, colleagues, and family had arrived early. No one mentioned Ethan. No one mentioned the legal battle, because he was now nothing more than a past chapter. Rebecca raised her glass, her eyes filled with pride. Everyone, let's toast to Amanda, a woman who fought until the very end, not just to protect her assets, but more importantly, to protect her worth. Applause erupted around the table. I smiled, warmth spreading through me. Lisa, my assistant, smirked. Now that you're finally free from that jerk, what's next on your list? I chuckled, setting my wine glass down. Starting a new chapter. More details? Rebecca asked curiously. I looked around the room, at the faces of the people who had stood by me. I had not only freed myself from Ethan, but I had also found myself again. I'm expanding the company, I said firmly. It's time to focus on what really matters. My future, not my past. Lisa laughed. And a little enjoyment of life too? I shrugged, taking a sip of my wine. Of course. I didn't fight this battle just to keep worrying about the past. Laughter filled the room, the joy spreading through the celebration. After the party ended, I stood on the hotel balcony, gazing at the city lights stretching far into the distance. A gentle breeze brushed against my skin, carrying a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. My phone vibrated. An unknown number. I stared at it for a few seconds, then pressed block without hesitation. I didn't need to know if it was Ethan. He was no longer a part of my life. I took a deep breath, letting go of every worry, every burden, every wound from the past. Tomorrow I would wake up to a new beginning, one that I controlled. And that was my greatest victory. I once thought my marriage would last forever, that Ethan was the person who would walk beside me until the end. But life has a way of teaching us lessons we never expect. Looking back at everything that happened, I realized that betrayal isn't just about love. It's about broken trust, about someone trying to strip away what you've worked so hard to build. But the key isn't to panic or let anger take over. It's about staying in control and making smart moves. Ethan once believed I would crumble when he left. He thought I would be weak, that I would accept losing everything without a fight. But he was wrong. I didn't just protect my assets, I protected myself. Because the truth is, no one can take your power away if you know how to defend yourself. I remember the moment I discovered his secret messages, the hidden withdrawals, the schemes he had been plotting. I could have confronted him right then. I could have screamed, argued, or fallen into the emotional trap he wanted me to step into. But I didn't. I chose silence, I chose to observe, to plan, and I stayed one step ahead. Sometimes the most powerful move in life isn't trying to hold on to something broken. It's walking away from those who no longer deserve you. There will come a time when you realize that the person you trusted most is the one who betrays you without hesitation. There will be moments when you understand that not everyone is meant to stay in your life. And when that moment comes, you have two choices. You can let betrayal break you, or you can stand up, adjust your crown, and move forward, stronger than ever. I chose the second option. And I want you to remember this: no one controls your life unless you allow them to. I don't regret my past. I don't regret loving Ethan. But I also don't regret leaving him. Because the moment I walked away, I reclaimed everything: my freedom, my peace, and my power. And that is worth more than anything Ethan ever thought he could take from me. Life doesn't always go as planned. Sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. But when faced with betrayal, the key isn't to panic or despair, it's to protect yourself. Always take control of your own life, and never let anyone else determine your worth. Sometimes the strongest move isn't holding on, it's letting go of what no longer deserves you. And when you do that, you don't just lose a relationship, you win yourself back. What do you think about Amanda's story? If you've experienced something similar or have thoughts on handling a toxic relationship, share in the comments. Don't forget to follow the channel for more real-life stories about life, family, and valuable lessons.